The crystalline spires of the Galactic Council stretched endlessly through the void, each tower representing a species that had earned their place among the civilized. 47 races had gathered in the Great Assembly Chamber, their forms as diverse as the stars themselves. The Zephyrians floated in their containment fields, their gaseous bodies shifting with each thought. The ironclad Mactans stood silent as monuments, while the telepathic Velfari communicated in shimmering waves of mental energy. Council speaker Zixthara raised her 6 crystalline arms, her voice resonating through translation, matrices that converted her harmonic frequencies into meaning each species could comprehend. We convene to address the Terra situation. 50 cycles have passed since the quarantine protocol was implemented. War Marshal Krenth's scarred mandibles clicked with dismissive humor. His warrior species had conquered 12 systems before joining the Council's embrace. The humans remain as primitive as ever. Their planet broadcasts chaos daily. Wars over invisible lines on maps, violence over mythical deities, destruction of their own habitat for temporary gain. Diplomat Veltar's psychic emanations carried amused condescension to every mind present. My analysis confirms their emotional instability. They form attachments to individual lives rather than statistical populations. They prioritize immediate suffering over long-term strategic benefits. Most tellingly, they question authority structures that have maintained order for millennia. The assembled representatives shared what passed for laughter among their respective species. The humans had been such a disappointment. First contact protocols had been standard. Observe, evaluate, integrate, or eliminate. But humanity had reacted with such irrational hostility to simple compliance requirements. When offered the choice between submission to Council authority or planetary quarantine, they had actually chosen isolation. Zixthara's crystalline form pulsed with satisfaction. The other primitive worlds accepted integration gracefully. The Kepler 442 inhabitants embraced their agricultural designation within 3 cycles. The Proxima settlements understood their mining obligations immediately. Even the aggressive Tau Ceti colonies submitted once they witnessed our technological superiority. Each world had found its place in the grand design. Some provided raw materials, others served as manufacturing centers. Many contributed their unique biological or technological capabilities to the greater galactic community. The system had functioned flawlessly for over 3,000 cycles, bringing peace and prosperity to countless worlds. Krenth's weapon systems hummed with anticipation. Perhaps demonstration is required. The humans need to understand their position in the natural order. My fleets could reduce their resistance capabilities within rotations. Unnecessary violence reflects poorly on our civilization, Veltar interjected smoothly. However, continued isolation serves no purpose. They contribute nothing to galactic prosperity while consuming resources that could benefit productive species. The Terra quarantine has become an inefficiency we can no longer justify. The vote was unanimous, as council votes always were. Efficient democracy required informed consensus, and the council's information systems were unquestionably comprehensive. Earth would be given one final opportunity to join galactic civilization on appropriate terms. Integration or elimination. The choice, as always, would be theirs. Zixthara's harmonics carried finality. Begin preparation protocols. 50 cycles of isolation have surely taught them wisdom. Even humans cannot remain primitive forever. Dr. Sarah Chun stared at the data. Streaming across her monitors in the Deep Space Observation Facility buried beneath the Atama Desert. For 3 years, she had been analyzing the electromagnetic signatures that leaked through the so-called communication dead zone surrounding Earth. The aliens had been sloppy, assuming humans lacked the technology to decrypt their transmissions. They were wrong. Atlas, the quantum AI construct developed during the quarantine years, had cracked their encryption protocols 18 months ago. What humanity discovered shattered every assumption about galactic civilization. The intercepted communications revealed a network of control so vast and sophisticated that it made Earth's worst dictatorships look like amateur hour. The Kepler 442 system wasn't an agricultural paradise. It was a slave plantation. Billions of beings genetically modified to maximize crop production, their natural lifespans extended solely to increase productivity. The Proxima colonies weren't mining partners. They were expendable labor, worked to death extracting resources for council coffers, while their families were held as collateral. Captain Marcus Rivera reviewed the tactical assessments on his secondary display. "Sarah, this changes everything. We thought we were dealing with a typical first contact scenario. This is something else entirely." The data painted a horrifying picture. The Council maintained their peaceful facade through carefully orchestrated proxy wars, systematically eliminating any species that developed inconvenient technologies or ideologies. Races that showed signs of independence were pitted against each other until both sides were weakened enough to control. Those who refused to fight were simply erased from existence, their worlds listed as failed colonies in official records. But the most disturbing revelation came from the resistance networks. Hidden throughout the galaxy, oppressed species had been attempting to organize for centuries. The Council's response was swift and brutal. Entire bloodlines eliminated, cultures systematically destroyed, histories rewritten to erase any memory of rebellion. ATLA's projected probability matrices across the holographic display. Analysis indicates 73% of current Council member species were forcibly integrated through manufactured conflicts. Historical records show consistent patterns of artificial resource crises, strategic diplomatic failures, and convenient technological setbacks occurring precisely when species achieved independence thresholds. Chun's hands trembled as she accessed the deepest intelligence files. The Council hadn't just been monitoring humanity during the quarantine. They had been studying human psychology, social structures, and military capabilities. Not to understand them, but to determine the most efficient method of control. The irony was staggering. Earth had been quarantined for being too violent, too primitive, too chaotic. But the galaxy beyond was soaked in blood. The only difference was that Council violence was sanitized, organized, and hidden behind layers of bureaucratic efficiency. Rivera activated the secure communication array. "We need to contact the underground resistance network. If there are others fighting this system, they need to know they're not alone." For the first time in 50 years, humanity had a purpose that extended beyond their own survival. They had found the enemy, and the enemy had no idea what was coming. The human response defied every tactical prediction in Council databases. Instead of building weapons or fortifying Earth, humanity launched the most audacious information warfare campaign in galactic history. Within weeks, encrypted data packets were simultaneously transmitted to every oppressed world the resistance networks had identified. The packets contained everything: Council meeting recordings, resource allocation algorithms, genetic modification protocols, planetary management strategies, and most damaging of all, the complete psychological profiles the Council had compiled on every member species. Each world received proof that their struggles weren't isolated incidents but part of a systematic program of exploitation. War Marshal Krent's fleet readiness reports painted a picture of chaos spreading faster than his ships could contain it. The humans have infected 17 systems with their propaganda. Kepler 442 agricultural workers have stopped reporting to production facilities. Proxima mining operations are experiencing coordinated equipment failures. The Tau Ceti colonies are demanding renegotiation of their tribute agreements. Zixthara's crystalline form flickered with stress patterns. The Council's carefully maintained balance was crumbling. For 3 millennia, their power had rested on a simple principle: isolated species believing they were alone in their suffering. Humans had shattered that isolation in a matter of rotations, but the true genius of humanity's strategy became clear when the first resistance cells began coordinating across species barriers. The Velthari telepaths, whose mental networks had been restricted to Council-approved channels, suddenly found their abilities amplified by human-designed communication relays. The Macton heavy industry specialists discovered their manufacturing capabilities could be repurposed for liberation rather than exploitation. Diplomat Veltar's psychic emanations carried panic for the first time in centuries. The humans aren't trying to conquer. They're teaching others to question. Our behavioral modification protocols are useless against targets who no longer believe in the legitimacy of our authority. The cascade effect was unstoppable. Species that had accepted their designated roles for generations suddenly understood they had choices. Worlds that had never communicated with each other began sharing resources and strategies. The Council's divide-and-control tactics became impossible to maintain when everyone knew the game being played. Krenth's weapons systems powered down as he received reports from across his fleet. "Sir, my commanders are requesting clarification on target priorities. Multiple species are claiming human alliance status. Standard subjugation protocols require updated parameters." The final insult came when 3 Council member species formally requested withdrawal from the Assembly. Not rebellion, not war, but simple bureaucratic resignation. They cited newly discovered evidence of historical manipulation and expressed interest in exploring alternative governmental structures. Zixthara realized the terrible truth. Humanity hadn't started a war. They had ended the illusion that made the Council's control possible. Without the carefully maintained ignorance of their subjects, the entire system was simply dissolving. The humans had won without firing a single shot. 6 months after the revelation cascade began, the Galactic Council chamber stood empty. The crystalline spires that had once symbolized eternal authority now served as monuments to a discredited age. Species after species had withdrawn from the Assembly, choosing to forge new relationships based on mutual benefit rather than hierarchical control. The Kepler 442 agricultural worlds had formed a voluntary cooperative, sharing both their abundant harvests and their advanced biotechnology with systems experiencing food shortages. The Proxima miners had negotiated fair compensation agreements while developing safety protocols that reduced industrial accidents by 90%. Even the warrior species like Krenth's people had found new purpose, offering protection services to developing worlds in exchange for cultural exchange programs. Humanity had declined every offer of leadership in the emerging galactic community. When 17 different species formally requested that Earth serve as the central coordinating hub for interstellar affairs, Dr. Chun's response had been characteristically direct. "We didn't break your chain so you could hand us the keys to new ones." Instead, humans had become something unprecedented in galactic history: professional facilitators of freedom. They established the Transparency Network, a communication system that ensured no species could again manipulate others through information control. They created the Resource Sharing Protocol, allowing worlds to coordinate aid during natural disasters or technological challenges. Most importantly, they instituted the Voluntary Association Charter, which guaranteed any species the right to participate in galactic affairs on their own terms, or withdraw completely without consequences. The former Council species struggled most with the transition. Zixthara's people had spent centuries believing their crystalline biology made them naturally superior administrators. Discovering that their administrative efficiency had been built on the suffering of others created a species-wide psychological crisis that required years of careful rehabilitation. Atlas had compiled comprehensive reports on the transformation. Over 300 enslaved worlds had achieved independence. 17 extinct species had been revealed as survivors in hidden colonies, their extinction fabricated by the Council to prevent rescue attempts. Technologies suppressed for millennia were being freely shared, accelerating development across the galaxy at rates that made the old Council's progress look glacial. Captain Rivera monitored the deep space communication networks from Earth's first orbital embassy station. The chatter had changed completely. Instead of carefully coded diplomatic exchanges hiding ulterior motives, the galaxy now buzzed with genuine collaboration. Art, science, philosophy, and simple friendship flowed freely between worlds that had been isolated for centuries. The greatest revelation was that the galaxy had never needed the Council's imposed order. Given the freedom to choose their own paths, species naturally gravitated toward cooperation rather than conflict. The peace the Council claimed to maintain had actually been preventing the real peace that emerged when beings were free to trust each other. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't superior technology or military might. It was the radical idea that civilizations could thrive without masters, that diversity was strength rather than chaos, and that the universe was vast enough for everyone to find their place without taking it from others. The war was over. The truth had won.